this is going to be recorded. Thank you. So that we have people asking us to do it because some people couldn't attend. So I hope we assume that we get your consent to get this recorded. Also, as I mentioned, we will share this recording, and also we will share the slides on our website. So you will be able to find everything there as well if you need any specific details. Now, who we are, I assume you can see my screen. If not, can you please let me know? But I hope that you can see my screen well. We are Ukrainian Action in Ireland. We are a registered nonprofit organization established by a group of volunteers, both Ukrainian and Irish. Our mission is to be voice and action of Ukrainians in Ireland. Also, we aim to provide humanitarian support to Ukraine, and we would like to promote a positive image of modern Ukraine in Ireland. We would like more people to know about how much we love Ukraine and why. Our volunteers work directly with refugees, providing them with the most needed support from the first days of war. We have exposure to multiple information channels, and we're represented there. We cooperate with the Irish government and Irish NGOs to provide information support to Ukrainians and to ease integration of Ukrainians into the Irish society. Also, we've recently launched a first Ukrainian center in Dublin at Vicar Street. So it's the first center where refugees can come and be engaged in various activities. So that's one of our projects as well. Now, the goal of the survey was to give voice to Ukrainians in Ireland. We wanted to hear directly from them. We wanted to understand their needs, their views. The survey was in Ukrainian, so we wanted to make sure that there is no language barrier there, that we can hear what they say exactly. And we designed the survey around key issues. So because we're in contact in refugees, often we collected the issues that they've been discussing with us, and we centered our survey around the issues that are at question. That would be accommodation, access to services, language. Also, the way to run the survey, it was an anonymous survey that was run through help of social media, hotel chats and Telegram messengers. So basically, we reached out to the most popular sources of information. And how we know that they're most popular? Well, we found out on the later when we actually looked in the results. So as you can see, almost 70% of Ukrainians as a preferred source of information, they use the local Telegram chats. Telegram is a messenger, and people fleeing the war, they created those Telegram chats for their own town or maybe hotel, and they use this as a primary source of information that is relevant to them. A similar amount of people use social media, and then many people ask friends, family, or someone else, and then official government websites have 40 people of our respondents looking into as a preferred source of information. 20% of people go to social media if they need anything, and then our website that we launched only several months ago as a source of information for refugees has 15% of respondents looking to it as a preferred source of information. Now, the agenda for this, I will explain the profiles of respondents, so who are the people replying to our survey. Then we will speak about the impact of war, accommodation issues, language, employment. We'll discuss access to services. We will pass on some feedback on open questions, and then we will go to Q&A. Now, if you have any questions during my presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, because I understand that the presentation will be full of numbers and details, and it might be hard to to keep the question until then. So please feel free to put it in the chat. I will not stop to answer. However, when I finish the presentation, I will look firstly through all the questions in the chat, and then we will proceed with the verbal conversation if you have any further questions, if that's okay. So please don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat if you feel that you need to ask it during my presentation. So first section is respondents. So who are the people that reply to our survey? In one week of survey, Almost 2,200 people, adults, it was a survey focused around adults, 2,200 adults responded to our survey, but because majority of them were came with children, we can say that we covered 4,400 Ukrainians fleeing the war to Ireland, and they live in 25 counties, so we have quite a good exposure location-wise. This is about 13% of the total population, Ukrainians who arrived on the date of survey. Majority of them would be female, almost 90% are female and 10% are male. And then the average age, the biggest respondents coverage in terms of age would be 18 to 44. Now we cross-checked this data with Intrail, and as you can see, it's quite matching. So we consider our survey as representative. Some highlights from the respondents: 47% of our respondents are single mothers with kids. Now, 2/3 of them are married, but they left their spouses behind, and then 1/3 of them are single. And then 14% of people came with dependents, that would be excluding kids, so it's other dependents, and majority of those dependents are elderly parents. 37% of female Ukrainians arrived with a kid, so 22% arrived with 2 children, 7% arrived with 3 or more children. We have people arriving with 4, 5 kids, 6. I think we had one family arriving with 6 kids, and then 34% arrived without children. 10% of respondents brought both children and dependents, which means that their integration might be even more complicated because they have a wider family to look after. Now, next section that I would like to share with you was optional in our survey. We wanted to ask people how much were they impacted by war. However, we were not really sure if we can. So we phrased our questions very carefully. We left them optional, and we didn't know how much answers will we get. In fact, we get many answers. Vast majority of our respondents replied to those questions. Even more so, there was a comment section, and many people left comments. So they really wanted to share their journey. They really wanted to share their experience. They really wanted to be heard. So this is why we're sharing this section with you. 44% of Ukrainians answering the survey have active war actions that happened or happening at the moment in their city or in the neighborhood. Also, people mentioned that they live close to Russian or Belarus border. They mentioned that the war zone approaching the region where they live. So 44% of our respondents are impacted in this way. 27% say that their city's infrastructure is damaged or ruined. And then 15% have their location occupied by Russians. Another 15% say that their house is damaged or ruined, meaning they don't have a place to go back. Many people mentioned that it's their second time they are relocating, so they had to flee the war from Donbas or Crimea region 8 years ago, and now they have to resettle for the second time. Also, people mentioned that constant rocket bombings are happening in their area. They had to hide in bomb shelters often with their children. They're afraid of Russian soldiers approaching, and that, as I said, many people said that their city is already occupied. Now, many are afraid to go back at this stage because their homes are close to borders, and they've mentioned challenges with employment, mentioned challenges with access to medical and education services, high prices for fuel and food, and also a fair portion of our respondents mentioned that their husbands are now fighting to defend Ukraine, and they feel better when their spouses and children are far away from the war zone. So this is why they're staying here, to keep their loved ones at peace of mind, at least. Now, there was another section of the survey related to impact of war that was related to psychological support. And it was a question about whether or not people need help in this area. Half of the people said they do not need help. 30% of people said that they don't know, meaning that sooner or later they will probably find out. Very little number of respondents mentioned that they already have help. So as you can see, 1%, only 1% attends a certain form of support group, 4% has an individual therapy sessions, and then 16% of respondents are actively looking for help. So that was a very insightful information for us in Ukrainian Action. Moving on, accommodation. 68% of our respondents received their accommodation from government, and then 32% found accommodation by themselves, and that could be using their relatives or friends or someone they know in Ireland, or just they found their accommodation themselves through various channels. 83%, so vast majority of respondents live in the accommodation free of charge. 11% pay utility bills, and then 6% are paying rent. This yellow line shows the level of satisfaction, and as you can see, people are very satisfied with the location, and we will speak about that in a while. And then we also asked people about the access to basic amenities such as grocery shops, pharmacies, schools, GPs, etc. And you can see the result here on the bottom on the right. And interesting finding was that 22% of respondents, they don't have access to supermarkets, and half of them are not provided with food. And then 38% of respondents do not have school within walking distance. Now, overall, we saw a very, very high level of satisfaction and a lot of gratitude from people about their accommodation. Even people who rated the accommodation with the lowest scores, they still were grateful. They appreciated safety. So safety, of course, is the key message here. And also they find good everywhere they look. So they have appreciated nice nature and surroundings. So people are not complaining much, even if they rated the location with a lower score. Now, issue of privacy was brought to us because sometimes people, even of a different gender, are placed in the same room. So strangers of a different gender could be placed in the same room, and we've heard a number of those responses in our survey. However, by far the biggest topic in relation to accommodation would be access to public transport. That is a challenge for many of our respondents, and such remote locations impose challenges for other areas of their lives. So that is one of the challenges that was mentioned to us through this survey. Services that helped people to find shelter. Now, this is applicable for those 30% of respondents who found shelter themselves. There was a question, who helped you to find this shelter? And on your screens, you can see the various foundations or websites or initiatives that helped people find accommodation. So we, on behalf of people, are extremely grateful to everyone who made it happen. Thank you very much for sheltering Ukrainians, for facilitating sheltering Ukrainians. Now, language. Moving on to language area. On the right-hand side, you can see information about how proficient people are in their knowledge of English language. So basically, first line is basic knowledge. That would be almost 30% of people, 27. And then further you go to the right, all the way to expert knowledge. So if we draw the line in between, and we can say that first half is average knowledge language, doesn't give individual a freedom to find job and to integrate easily. And then the other half would be people who have enough language. The stats would look like this: 63% have not enough language skills, so they want to improve, they need to improve. And then 37% of people have enough skills to navigate environment. Interesting enough, this data matches a recent NGO survey one-to-one, so that those are exactly the same numbers that we got in our survey and NGO had in their survey. So I think this is quite close to the reality. Now you can see that even out of 63% that struggle with their language, 27 have barely any language. So those 27% means that basic knowledge would be just a couple of words. So this is a lot that needs to improve for people. Now, of course, when people don't know language enough, they study it. So more than half of respondents study the language themselves. That would be through watching films or some courses or some books, so that they took this initiative by themselves. Now, I would like to draw your attention that 40% of our respondents are studying in the classroom, and this is amazing result. So I'm incredibly grateful. We in Ukrainian Action are incredibly grateful to everyone who made it happen. We think it's absolutely amazing coverage that 40% of respondents have access to offline classroom courses. 23% of our respondents are still actively looking for English classes, so we hope that they will find some way to study language shortly. Most respondents are very happy with the education they are provided with. However, relocation, you probably know that Ukrainians are impacted by often relocation once they are in the government care, they've been relocated. So relocation is affecting and interrupting those studies. And then respondents express strong desire to study harder, to have more conversational practice, to study more frequently. And then we also had several comments mentioning that courses are oriented on unemployed people. So when people get employment, it's hard to find courses outside of working hours. Now, moving on to the next subject of employment. As you can see on this slide, I understand this is a very busy slide, but what the highlights of it is that 73% of Ukrainians answering the survey are willing to actively contribute to the economy. So they really want to, they either have work or looking for a job at the moment. Half of Ukrainians are now looking for a job. Only 5% found the job matching their qualification and skills. You can see here that 10% found a job that does not match their skill set, and then 7% are now in a temporary job and they are looking for a new one that will match their skill set better. And then 22% of all respondents will not be able to find a job just because they have some obligations that stop them from looking for one, or maybe they have health conditions. So basically they answered that they cannot look for a new job because they can't have one. Now, out of 50% of people that are looking for a job now, 78% of them do not have a bank card, which we will speak about the services a bit later, but just to let you know that some of them might find challenges even when they find the job, because bank card and bank account is now being a challenge for them. We would also like to highlight your attention to the gender-based challenges. So mothers with children, they face difficulties finding the job. They've mentioned that it's very hard to find childcare. It's hard to find after-school care, and that some portion of them will not be able to work due to inability to put their kids into childcare and actually start working. Now let's discuss access to services. We've asked people which documents they already have and are they satisfied with this process. Now, we received incredible feedback on temporary protection and PPS number services. As you can see, it's just the highest rating that could possibly be there. So those services are very smooth. And then 37% of people don't have a medical card yet. They might have some issues with finding GP in the area, and this medical card service received a bit lower level of satisfaction. 3% of Ukrainians don't have, only 3% of Ukrainians already exchanged their driving license. So the level of satisfaction still here is quite high. It means that the process is clear. It's just people haven't gone through the process just yet. And then bank card satisfaction was the lowest out of all, and 70% of Ukrainians still don't have a bank card. Now, this slide is quite complex, so I want to walk you through it. So as you can see here, people 30-something% of people have not received their medical card, and then more people have actually received it, while with the bank card situation is opposite. 70% of people did not receive the card, and therefore this blue line, it shows satisfaction score. You can see the scale here. So people who did not receive the bank account, they're not so satisfied. Among key issues that people shared with us, they've mentioned access to intra offices, again, lack of public transport or remote location of where people have been placed is a challenge here. And then people mentioned challenges with opening bank accounts. So sometimes they just face with refusals. Sometimes they have issues with the proof of address, and banks would not accept documents that people are capable to provide within the circumstances they are in. Relocation issues, again, impacts the process of receiving the documentation. Sometimes documents get lost, and then language barrier was mentioned as well. Now, in Ukrainian Action, we noticed that probably the high satisfaction on temporary protection and PPSN can be a cultural thing, because in Ukraine, government services sometimes can be lengthy. So the fact that everything was done so quickly in intra offices was something great for Ukrainians that they've noticed, and they really, really appreciate it. But then when it comes to bank account opening, Ukrainians are very used to bank account being open within hours, and they've been granted a card within hours. So this lengthy process, when it takes weeks and for some people months to get even account opened, never mind to receive the bank card through post, that is something new, and this can explain the lower satisfaction rate on the bank account service, just because it's a cultural barrier. Now, open questions feedback. I know you've now listened to a lot of information, so I will take a deep breath now, because the next section is about the open questions. So we've asked people a number of open questions, and we've grouped them so that it's somehow presentable and shareable. Now, what's important, the next slide I would like to share is the challenges. And I would like to mention that people said that all challenges seem absolutely irrelevant compared to the first few days of war. So now I will present the challenges to you, but we understand that the appreciation is first and foremost challenge, is the first and foremost feedback that we had from Ukrainians. However, they've shared some challenges with us as well. Lack of English skills is a challenge that's on their side. They will learn. Issues facing with medical system being reported to us, uncertainty with accommodation, and difficulty to find or rent accommodation which would match people's needs. People mentioned issues with transportation while they are in remote areas. That is a very big portion of people that mentioned that. They've mentioned roads not suitable for work, and again, this is related to transportation, a lack of personal transport and lack of public transport. They mentioned that some translators hired by social services have unfriendly attitude. Unfortunately, we had more than one feedback here, so we had to add it in as well. People struggle to understand difficulties. People struggle to understand taxation system. They have difficulties in understanding. So when they are offered a job, they don't understand how to convert the number that is offered to them into the actual amount of money they will get. So this has been mentioned many times. As we said before, people have challenges finding a job matching qualifications. Now, issues with childcare we mentioned as well, a lack of information about activities for children. Again, lack of language skills might impact this need. Also, again, rural locations, people can't access to work, schools, or even language courses due to remote locations. Now, people with disabilities sometimes are waiting for medical cards for months, and that's been mentioned in the survey. A few people mentioned that they brought Ukrainian hryvnia with them just because they didn't have opportunity to exchange it during their journey. And apparently, we didn't know, but apparently they can't exchange hryvnia in Ireland to euros. So this is something they've mentioned too. And then, as I mentioned before, strangers of different genders sometimes placed in the same room, which people feel very uncomfortable about. Now, the next and the last area of this survey was what would people like to say to Irish government and Irish people? And 10% of people mentioned various things. There was definitely a topic of Ukrainians that are asking to recognize qualifications of Ukrainian doctors, and either many doctors replied to our survey, or is it just a trend in society, something that they discuss, that we hear about it as much. All the same issues: public transport, accommodation, medical system. One of the new ones was a question, actually. They ask what will happen in a year when the temporary protection expires. So this is one of the open questions. However, all of that took only 10%. 90% of respondents wanted to pass the message of gratitude and appreciation. Every time I tried to process this information, I cried, because they are so grateful for understanding, for care. They said, thank you is not enough. We wish you to never know what war is on your land. People said that being in Ireland saved their lives and the lives of their children. Their thank you to every Irish person they've met here. They said that they're doing everything not to be a burden, and they're extremely grateful for everything. We wished Ireland and Irish people peace, and they honestly just were super grateful. So after this long and very detailed presentation full of numbers, if there is only one message that you can take away from this, let this message be a message of gratitude. We asked you to stand with Ukraine, and you did. Thank you. This is it. This is the end of my presentation.